They didn't just dislike you, they feared you. And weak people never fight alone, they gather. One by one they came crawling out of the cracks, pretending to be innocent, pretending to be concerned, pretending like it was your fault that their masks were slipping. But it wasn't concern, it was strategy. A calculated ambush. Behind closed doors, your name was a currency, an obsession, a threat too loud to ignore. You didn't need to swing, your silence alone made them bleed. That's why they circled up like cowards do before a lynching. They didn't want justice. They wanted witnesses. They wanted a public downfall. They wanted your crown cracked on the pavement while they filmed it for entertainment. Press the like button and subscribe to pay this message back and strengthen this voice they tried to silence. You didn't just survive this, you exposed it. And now, it's our turn to speak. Let's keep going. They thought you were alone. What they didn't realize was that the universe had been watching the whole time. That every fake handshake, every backroom scheme, every group chat filled with screenshots and shade, all of it was being recorded silently by something bigger than their egos. You weren't weak. You were patient. You didn't retaliate because you were scared. You stayed quiet because you were evolving. And when your rise came, it came so clean, so powerful, it humiliated them. See, people will forgive anything except your glow-up, especially if they had front-row seats to your suffering and still bet against you. That's what eats them alive. That's what keeps them up at night. They remember every time they laughed at you, every time they spread your name like poison. And now they have to sit in the same room with your success and pretend they didn't try to kill it. It wasn't gossip, it was warfare. You were targeted, not for being wrong, but for being right, for standing out, for not conforming, for being too damn solid in a world where everyone bends. You made them feel exposed, not by what you said, but by what you were. You showed them what real strength looks like, and they couldn't take it, so they tried to break you before more people noticed. It was damage control, but with pitchforks. Remember how they moved? Passive-aggressive posts, subtle jabs, fake concern, groupthink in full effect. They needed numbers because none of them had the spine to face you alone, and that's what makes this moment so satisfying. You didn't beg, you didn't chase, you didn't stoop. You let them dig the hole, and now they're sitting in it, looking up. There's a kind of silence that happens after a failed execution. When the target walks away breathing, stronger, glowing, the air gets heavy, the cowards get quiet, the group chat goes dark, the stares get longer. That's where you are now, in the silence after the storm. In the part of the movie where the villain they tried to erase stands back up. Not angry, not broken, just different. See, a lot of people liked you better when you were unsure, when you were small, when you asked for permission, when you needed them. But now your name doesn't shake. It shakes rooms. You became the storm. And the same mouths that cursed you are choking on their own pride. Let's talk psychology for a second. What happened to you wasn't random. It's called mobbing, when a group attacks an individual who threatens the comfort of their delusions. It's not a disagreement. It's psychological assassination, and it's ancient. Pack mentality. Weak minds can't handle lone wolves, so they try to corner them. But you weren't cornered. You were calculating. You watched, you learned, you rebuilt, and when you came back, you weren't looking for revenge. You were the revenge. Your evolution became the punishment. Your success became the sentence. And the court, the whole damn town, every fake supporter, every two-faced friend, every liar who smiled while sharpening the knife, they all got front-row seats. This wasn't karma. This was exposure. The most dangerous thing about you now, You speak calmly. You move quietly, and you know exactly what they're capable of. You're not paranoid. You're awake. So to the chosen ones still bleeding from the betrayal, let this be your reminder. It wasn't your fault. You were the mirror they couldn't stomach. You were the truth they tried to erase. But here you are, still standing, stronger, colder, sharper. You turned their betrayal into blueprint, their hate into fuel, their lies into your legacy. And to the ones who tried to bury you, thank you. You planted a garden, and now you gotta watch it bloom in full view, with no access, no apology, no reset. You lost them, but they lost you louder. So keep going, speak less, move smarter. Don't explain, don't argue, just win, like the villain they turned you into, but with the heart they never had. This is your era now. Let the cowards sit in the silence they earned. The community failed, and you just made history. And now, chosen one. If you've made it this far, it means something in your soul already knows. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a public assassination attempt. And yet, you walked out of the fire untouched. That's not luck. That's power. That's proof. So don't click away now. This isn't where your story ends. This is where it finally starts making sense. Drop the 777 in the comments if you're done playing small, done apologizing, done pretending you didn't notice the snakes. Let the world know you saw them all, and you're still standing. We're about to break this down step by step. And if you really are who they tried to erase, you'll feel it in your chest, that pull to stay, to see it all, to watch the truth unravel like a crime scene they never thought would be solved. Let's get into it, piece by piece, move by move. Welcome to the aftermath of their failure and the beginning of your rise. Number 1, it took a town to try you. And you still walked out untouched. When one person makes a whole community nervous, it's not a problem. It's power. They needed a squad, a network, a full-blown lineup of masked cowards just to try to break what you faced completely alone. That right there tells you everything about the threat you were. One target, you. 100 triggers, them. This wasn't just hate. It was organized fear, a spiritual manhunt dressed up like concern. And the funniest part? Even with all their forces combined, they still lost. Loudly, publicly, embarrassingly. You didn't even throw a punch. You didn't need to. You just existed. And it unglued every mask in the room. There were people who couldn't stand each other for years, yet suddenly became best friends when it came time to bring you down. People who barely knew you, but swore you were dangerous, just because your presence made them feel small. They rallied together like villagers chasing shadows, convinced that if they screamed loud enough, they could erase the light you carried. But what they forgot was that some storms don't respond to noise. They answer to silence. Your silence was your sword, and it cut deeper than any of their lies. Let's make something real clear. This wasn't drama. It was a full-scale takedown attempt. Boardroom meetings disguised as gossip, smiles that hid daggers, phone calls filled with strategy, not empathy. This wasn't people disagreeing with you. It was people assigning themselves your executioner roles. They created entire alliances, formed group chats, pulled receipts, shared screenshots like it was evidence in a trial they fabricated. You weren't there for it, but your name was in every mouth. You were the headline, the obsession, the shadow on their wall they couldn't ignore. And still, you didn't flinch, you didn't fold, you didn't even raise your voice. No one covered your back, no safety net, no crowd behind you, no status shielding you, just you, raw, real, alone, while they came armed with numbers, connections, fake smiles, and borrowed courage. They had backup. But you had backbone. And in the end, that's what wins. Here's the gut truth they'll never say out loud. They were terrified of what you would become if you healed, if you stood up, if you figured it all out. So they rushed, tried to destroy the seed before it could sprout. They knew once you grew roots, it was over. And now, they're watching the tree they tried to chop down grow taller than anything they've ever built. What eats them alive isn't that they failed, it's that they failed together against one person. And now they're stuck pretending it didn't happen while choking on your success. Let's not act like it didn't hurt. Being surrounded, lied on, outnumbered, that kind of betrayal hits deep. You had nights where it felt like the air itself was trying to strangle you, where silence felt like a sentence, not peace. But you didn't let that pain turn you bitter. You let it turn you bulletproof. You faced isolation like a soldier, and now you carry a presence no one can touch without shaking. Most people would have collapsed under a fraction of what you handled. You took it all and made it look like armor. They thought silence would kill you. They thought isolation would make you crawl back. But they didn't realize you were built in silence, sharpened in solitude, molded by pressure they couldn't even imagine. They confused your quiet with weakness when it was actually your loading screen. While they mocked you, you upgraded. While they slept, you evolved. Metaphorically, they needed a firing squad. You showed up unarmed and still walked out while their bullets ricocheted into each other. They needed a stage to crucify you. You turned it into your comeback tour, and now they're quiet. Oh, now the noise is gone. Isn't that funny? The same people who couldn't stop screaming your name when they thought you were down, now suddenly don't have opinions. Now they're neutral. Now they don't want drama. Now it's all water under the bridge. Convenient, right? But let them stay quiet. Let them sit in the silence you left them with. Because what you carry now, it's different. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about knowing, deep in your core, that they threw everything at you and still couldn't stop your rise. That's not ego. That's awareness. And it's the kind of power that can't be handed to you. You have to earn it in blood, sweat, and betrayal. So when the world looks at you confused, how are you still standing? Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them pretend you had help. Because the truth? You were the help. You were the weapon. You were the storm. They needed an army to test what you handled alone. That's not just a flex. That's legacy. That's the kind of pressure diamonds remember. You didn't just survive the battle, you rewrote the rules. And now they're playing catch-up with a version of you they can't even recognize, let alone control. So wear that isolation like a badge. Own that silence like it's royalty. And never forget this. It took all of them just to try and do what you faced by yourself. And you still won. Now sit with that and let the world watch. Number 2. Their alliance wasn't loyalty. It was shared insecurity wearing a mask. They didn't unite because of truth. They united because you threatened their illusion, and the truth would have shattered it. A lie can bring cowards together. But the moment truth walks in, the whole room gets cold. You didn't ruin their peace. You exposed the fact they never had any. Their group wasn't built on loyalty. It was built on fear that you might speak the truth they've been hiding from themselves. They didn't come together because you were wrong. They came together because you were real, and that terrified them. That's the part no one talks about. This wasn't justice. This wasn't accountability. This wasn't some group rising up to protect the community from your darkness. Nah, this was a mob forming because they couldn't handle your light. Your presence alone made the room uncomfortable. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't need to. You showed up, and their insecurities started screaming inside their own skulls. They didn't need proof. They needed relief. And the fastest way for broken people to find relief: point at someone else, make them the villain. You became the sacrifice they offered to protect the lie they'd all been living. Imagine this, a room full of people with nothing in common suddenly making eye contact across the table, nodding, agreeing, bonding, all over your name. Not facts, not truth, just shared discomfort. You made them confront themselves, and that's a battle they never trained for. It wasn't what you did that disturbed them. It's what you refused to do: play small, blend in, shrink to fit their comfort zones. You didn't expose their flaws with your mouth. You did it with your presence. That's what made you dangerous. So they came together, but not with loyalty, with fear, with shame, with jealousy. And when insecure people find each other, they don't heal, they feed. They fed on each other's false narratives about you, creating a fantasy where you were the problem and they were just protecting the peace. But the peace they claimed to be defending, it was fake from the start. Peace built on pretending. Peace built on silence. Peace built on avoiding the truth you carried in your bones. You didn't walk in loud, you walked in clear, and that clarity cracked their masks. Have you ever noticed how liars will preach unity right before they form a mob? They say it's about accountability, about healing, but behind closed doors, it's just gossip with better lighting. They said they came together out of concern, but real concern has conversation, not collusion. Real concern pulls you aside. Fake concern builds group chats. Their version of unity was nothing but synchronized insecurity. Let's get something straight. You didn't cause their dysfunction. You revealed it. You were like a pressure test in a faulty building. Everything that fell apart around you, it was already cracked. You just walked in and made the structure show its age. But they couldn't handle that. It's easier to blame the hammer than admit the walls were always hollow. So when they attacked, they were really defending the lie. The lie that they were good people. The lie that they were confident. The lie that they were secure. But the truth has a smell. It leaks into the room even when no one speaks it. And your presence reeked of it, so they painted you as toxic, as divisive, as unstable, but they were never describing you. They were describing themselves. They were projecting like broken movie reels, looping their own flaws onto your silhouette, because it was easier than turning inward. That's what cowards do. They attack what they envy and disguise it as concern. But here's the twist. Fake unity always collapses under the weight of its own lies. You didn't need to lift a finger. Time did the slicing for you. The same alliance that swore you were the problem, they've already started turning on each other, because when the enemy they invented no longer plays along, they start feeding on each other. That's the thing about groups built on gossip. Once the story ends, the silence gets uncomfortable. They swore they were standing for the truth, but truth never needs a team. It walks alone, just like you did. You ever wonder why they get so quiet when you enter the room now? It's not guilt, it's memory. They remember how loud they were when you couldn't defend yourself, how brave they pretended to be when they were in a group. But now that the crowd is gone and the narrative crumbled, all they have left is your shadow walking past them like a reminder of everything they failed to destroy. They didn't want to fix anything. They wanted you gone. But you didn't go. You stayed. And worse, you grew. And now they have to live with that. Imagine the bitterness of watching someone you tried to bury rise without even mentioning your name. Imagine the tension of realizing your biggest enemy never even retaliated. They just outlived your lies. That's where they're at now, living in a world where you walk free and they are trapped in the very image they tried to paint of you. But don't let it harden you. Let it fuel you. Let it remind you that your power is never in what they say about you. It's in what never breaks, no matter how hard they try. Their unity was loud, temporary, fragile. Yours, it's quiet, permanent, unshakable. You don't need a crowd. You never did. Your presence was the truth. And truth doesn't beg to be accepted. It forces the fake to reveal itself. Let them whisper, let them squirm, let them sit in the ruins of their alliance and pretend it wasn't fear that drove them together. You owe them no closure, no explanation, no reaction, because the most brutal revenge is thriving in the open dash after they tried to erase you in secret. Keep walking, chosen one. You don't need to scream. Your silence has always spoken louder than their noise. Number 3. They tried to bury you, forgetting you were rooted without them. The reason they couldn't kill you is simple. They didn't build you. They withdrew their support like oxygen, expecting you to choke. Instead, you learned how to breathe underwater. Your silence wasn't defeat. It was evolution happening in real time, and they missed it. They tried to break your reflection, not realizing you never needed their mirror to see yourself. They thought their silence would silence you. They thought their absence would erase you. They thought the moment they stopped clapping, the lights would dim and the show would end. But the joke's on them. You weren't built for their stage in the first place. They thought they had power because they had numbers, platforms, influence. But what they never had, not even for a second, was control. You never needed their permission to exist. You never built your foundation on their applause. So when they walked out, thinking they were taking the floor with them, they forgot you own the ground you stand on. Imagine someone trying to cancel a storm because they didn't like the forecast. That's what this was. They came for your character, like they were running PR. But here's the cold reality. You were never up for public approval. You were never standing in their spotlight. You were the light, self-made, self-fed. And that's what tore them up inside. You didn't fold. You didn't crawl back begging. You didn't even blink. You kept moving, and that movement shook them to their core. You ever notice how they went quiet the moment you proved you could thrive without them? That wasn't peace. That was panic, because everything they assumed was keeping you alive, their support, their friendship, their fake praise, turned out to be completely useless to your survival. You didn't just survive without their validation, you became undeniable in spite of it. And that was unforgivable. They thought you'd crumble without their likes, their attention, their approval. But you didn't just survive the silence, you flourished in it. The moment the noise stopped, your voice got louder. The moment the audience left, you started writing your real script. And now the story they thought they controlled has taken on a life of its own, one they can't edit, rewrite, or manipulate. They came for your image, not realizing your identity wasn't public property. It was forged in solitude, sharpened by rejection, anchored by pain they've never even tasted. They thought your confidence came from compliments. But you built it in the dark. where no one was watching, where no one was clapping, where no one believed. Imagine building a fire alone in a snowstorm. That's what you did. And now that it's burning, they want credit. They want control. Too late. They only ever knew the version of you that needed them, the old you, the one that tolerated their games. But the new you, that version is untouchable. That version doesn't explain itself. That version doesn't ask for a seat. That version owns the room, even if it has to build the room brick by brick from scratch. And that's why they hate you now, not because you changed, but because you stopped performing. You stopped waiting for their validation like it was currency. You stopped letting their opinions measure your value. You woke up. And once a real one wakes up, there's no going back to sleepwalking around fake people. Let them talk. Let them twist your name. Let them act like they had a hand in your story. The truth? You were never theirs to break. You were never theirs to build. You were never built on social support. You were built like an underground city, quiet, hidden, bulletproof. And now that it's surfaced, they're mad they don't have access. They played chess. You moved in silence. They bet on your breakdown. You bet on your rebirth. And now they're shocked that you became the very thing they tried to prevent. Unstoppable. You didn't just endure the storm. You were the storm. And their biggest mistake was thinking they could weather you with petty silence and fake distance. But you didn't just rise. You rose without them. And they will never forgive you for that. Now let them sit in the audience of your life and pretend they never doubted you. Let them act like they knew you'd make it. But you and I both know they weren't praying for your success. They were plotting your collapse. And yet, here you are, whole, wiser, and finally aware of who you really are. So don't slow down, don't look back, and don't wait for anyone to clap, because you don't need noise. You've got fire, and fire doesn't beg to be seen. It burns. Number 4. They didn't just lose, they got exposed with the whole world watching. They planned your funeral and accidentally broadcasted your resurrection. They didn't just fail, they got caught in 4K trying to bury someone they couldn't even scratch. This wasn't some quiet little misstep they could clean up behind the scenes. No, this was a public disaster, a full-blown collapse that unfolded right in front of the same crowd they tried to impress. The plan was rehearsed, the fake tears scripted, the betrayal masked as concern. But when it came time to perform, the truth tore through it like a blade through cheap fabric. At first, it looked like they had you. Everyone was watching. They had the crowd, the narrative, the sympathy points. You were painted as the problem, the disruptor, the one who changed. But one by one, their lies started leaking. Inconsistencies, slips, defections, the same people who clapped when you were being dragged. They're the ones turning their heads now, pretending they didn't know the full story. Of course they didn't. Cowards never do. They didn't just lose, they exposed themselves, and you didn't lift a damn finger. That's the part that burns them. You didn't fight back with drama. You didn't air out your screenshots. You didn't scramble to clear your name. You let them talk. And while they danced around lies trying to look clean, the truth rolled through like a wrecking ball. What they mocked in public got reversed in public. What they tried to stain came back glowing. And now they're left with a mess they can't mop up without admitting what they did. Imagine someone throwing dirt on your name and slipping in their own mess while doing it. That's what happened here. And now, the same crowd that watched your so-called downfall is watching your glow-up. And they see everything. The whispers, the side eyes, the way people don't even take them seriously anymore. That's not karma. That's accountability with an audience. Let them fumble, let them dodge eye contact, let them live with the reality that they didn't just fail to take you out, they failed loudly, and that echo, it's not going anywhere. Number 5. They thought you were quiet because you were scared, but you were just loading. They kept talking like the storm had passed, not realizing you were the storm, in stealth mode. They saw your silence and thought you were scared. They thought you tapped out, that you backed down. But what they didn't realize is, predators don't growl when they're calculating. You weren't defeated. You were just studying the battlefield in silence, while they were too loud to see their own exposure. While they flailed around needing attention, needing backup, needing the room to believe their side of the story, you were quiet. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you were sharpening the blade they swore you didn't have. Every lie they told gave you insight. Every shot they fired revealed their aim. You weren't retreating, you were refining. Your silence was never weakness. It was a trap. Imagine a bomb disguised as stillness. That was you. Still, calm, composed, but lethal. They expected you to react, cry, fight, beg, explain. But you didn't flinch. You let the truth marinate while their lies rotted in real time. That's why they're exhausted now. Their performance had a shelf life. Yours didn't. You understood something they never could. Truth doesn't rush. It doesn't argue. It doesn't compete. It just waits and wins. They couldn't comprehend how you stayed silent while they screamed your name in lies. But that's the thing about people who live for validation. They confuse discipline with defeat. You were never trying to prove anything. You were preserving your energy. Because real power, it doesn't show up needing to be seen. It lets fools exhaust themselves, then walks through the ashes like it never left. They said you were weak because you didn't clap back. But here's the twist. You didn't have to. They exposed themselves with every word. You just watched it happen. Now you're walking around reborn, clear-minded, peaceful. Meanwhile, they're glitching in circles, trying to control a narrative that slipped through their hands the moment you stopped responding. So let them keep mistaking silence for softness. They'll keep learning the hard way. That quiet doesn't mean powerless. It means dangerous. Number 6. They used what you loved against you, and still lost. They came through the back door of your heart, thinking that's where you were weakest, not knowing it's where you got your fire. They didn't come dressed like villains. They came in familiar faces, familiar voices, carrying memories that used to bring you peace. They smiled with the same mouths that once spoke love. But this time, their hugs had knives stitched into the sleeves, and still, they couldn't break you. They thought the best way to take you down was to use what you once cared about. People you trusted, people who knew where your soft spots were. They figured, why fight this one head-on when we can send in ghosts wearing old names? And that's exactly what they did. They didn't swing at you. They triggered you, weaponized your past, dug through your memories like it was an armory. But the mistake they made was assuming your evolution never happened. You weren't the same, not soft, not naive, not blind. You'd been cracked open before and rebuilt with steel. Imagine someone trying to use your old diary to take you out, but you've already turned those pages into lessons. That's what happened. They thought shame would be your undoing, that you'd crumble if your past got brought back up. But instead, you owned every scar. You didn't just survive the chapters they wanted to mock. You turned them into scripture. They tried to make your story a weapon. You made it your foundation. They brought up who you used to be, not realizing that person died in the fire they started. You didn't run from your mistakes. You grew from them. That's something they'll never understand, because they're still hiding behind illusions, scared of the truth. Meanwhile, you're standing on top of everything they tried to bury you under. They didn't just fail to break you, they helped make you unbreakable. Let them watch now. Let them wonder how someone they thought was soft turned into something they can't even define. And let the silence between you say what your mouth never needs to. I saw everything. I felt everything. And I survived all of it. And you'll never be that vulnerable again. Not to them, not to anyone. Number 7. They turned your name into a cult and still couldn't kill the truth. When a lie is repeated enough, it starts to feel like gospel, until truth walks in and flips the whole altar. It wasn't just gossip, it became a full-blown ritual. They turned your name into a sermon and worshipped the sound of your downfall like it was salvation. One whisper turned into weekly gatherings, screenshot circles, group chats that looked more like congregations. And the center of their worship, you, the villain they invented, the icon they needed to blame. Because as long as you were the problem, they never had to look in the mirror. They didn't just hate you, they studied you, broke you down like scripture, quoted things you never said, memorized mistakes you never made. And every time they spoke your name, it gave their lies a little more air. They weren't interested in truth, they were addicted to narrative, obsessed with making you the common enemy, because it gave their broken egos something to rally around. But cults built on lies always implode. Eventually, the cracks got too loud. Contradictions started leaking. Stories stopped sinking. One person slipped. Another started asking questions. And suddenly, that holy image they built of your evil didn't hold up anymore. You didn't even have to speak. Their own obsession set fire to the temple they built on your name. Imagine building a whole religion just to escape your own self-hate. That's what they did. But when the altar started crumbling, they had nothing left to stand on. You weren't fighting for your reputation. You let them overdose on their own obsession. And now, they look ridiculous, preaching a dead gospel. Their sermons don't hit like they used to. People are waking up. Sides are shifting. The silence from those who used to chant the loudest. That's not peace. That's embarrassment. They tried to burn your image like a witch trial. But you never lived in their version of you anyway. You were already free, already risen, already above it. They just couldn't accept that someone they lied on could glow this loud, this long, with zero help. They didn't destroy you. They exposed themselves. Number 8. They invested years into breaking you because they knew you were built to lead. They saw the crown before you even knew there was a throne. That's why they came so early, so hard, and in numbers. This wasn't random. This wasn't petty. This was strategic obsession dressed up like drama. They didn't attack you by accident. They targeted you on purpose, early, consistently, and with disturbing dedication, because they saw something forming inside you before you ever knew what it was. Power, presence, potential. You were a threat to everything fake they built their lives on. Your very existence made their illusions start cracking. So they did what cowards always do when they see something real. Try to kill it before it grows. They studied you like a problem to be solved, watched your every move, imitated, mocked, then tried to bury you under labels, not because they didn't see your value, but because they did, and it scared the hell out of them. Imagine watching someone plant a seed, and you already know it'll grow into the one tree that blocks your sun. That's how they saw you, as a future threat. So they launched the attack before you could bloom. But while they wasted their years trying to sabotage you, you spent yours transforming. You took the loneliness they created and turned it into a lab. You turned betrayal into blueprints. Pain became your professor, and while they were throwing dirt on your name, they accidentally helped you grow roots too deep to pull. Now they're watching you rise, and there's nothing they can do to stop it, because they were fighting against something they never built, never understood, and could never control. And that's why they lost. You weren't a mistake. You were momentum. You were always going to rise. They thought if they drained your support, you'd stay small, but you didn't need their stage. You became your own platform. Now their influence is crumbling, not because you attacked them, but because your evolution revealed how hollow they were. You weren't just a target, you were the warning they ignored. And now, you're the result they can't deny. Number 9. Their defeat was already written. They just played their part in your rise. They didn't derail your destiny. They delivered you straight into it. From the very first shot they fired, their failure was locked in. Not because you were untouchable at the time, but because you were chosen for something bigger, something they were never supposed to understand, let alone stop. The moment they plotted on your downfall, they became part of the script they swore they could rewrite. Every insult, every betrayal, every backstab they orchestrated wasn't a block. It was a bridge. They thought they were applying pressure to break you. But pressure is how diamonds get born. Let that sink in. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the force working through you. And guess what? You can't fight something eternal with cheap tactics and gossip. You can't throw shade at someone who already walked through hell and made it back glowing. What they didn't realize is that the more they attacked, the stronger you became. They were your gym, your forge, your catalyst. Every time they tried to shut a door, they built a hallway. Imagine this. They built a cage, locked you in, and threw away the key. But they didn't know. You were the key. Every loss became a lesson, every betrayal, a blueprint. They thought you were breaking, but you were building. They thought you were folding, but you were calculating. They thought they were stopping something small, but they were fueling something unstoppable. The irony? They wrote themselves into the very legacy they tried to destroy. Now look at them, exhausted, bitter, confused how someone they tried to erase ended up center stage. But you know why they lost? Because they were temporary. And what's meant is permanent. Their role, short-term noise. Your path, long-term thunder. You didn't just survive them, you outlived the attack. And now they're a footnote in your rise. Their failure wasn't random, it was required. They were the test that proved your power. And they lost, not just publicly, but inevitably. Number 10. You survived what would have buried 99%, and you did it alone. This wasn't survival. This was a resurrection while they watched, hoping you'd flatline. Let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't petty drama. This was psychological war. Coordinated attacks, back-to-back betrayals, mind games designed to make you question your worth, your memory, your reality. They didn't just aim for your name, they aimed for your spirit. And most people would have been erased by this, broken, shattered, institutionalized, gone. But you transformed. They tried to drag you into a pit so dark you'd never find your way back. But every tear you cried watered your next level. every insult sharpened your insight, every silent night where you had no one in your corner. That was training. Your breakdown wasn't the end. It was the activation. They thought they saw your breaking point, but what they witnessed instead was your becoming. Imagine being left for dead, then showing up glowing, unbothered, unreadable, like a ghost with unfinished business. That's what you did. You turned their mental warfare into momentum. While they tried to dismantle your mind, you rebuilt it brick by brick, steel by steel, until nothing they threw could penetrate. You didn't just get back up, you upgraded. And now, they don't know how to approach you, they can't read you, they can't reach you. The same ones who tried to dismantle your peace now have to watch you walk in a power they accidentally helped build. That's the brutal irony. Their abuse became your blueprint. Their hate became your hammer. Their betrayal became the very thing that taught you to never need them again. Let's be real, they weren't just hoping you'd break. They were banking on it. They were emotionally invested in your destruction. But the universe flipped the script, and now your survival haunts them louder than your absence ever could. Your existence is proof that resilience isn't pretty. It's gritty, ugly, silent, and savage. They didn't destroy you. They revealed you. And now there's no going back. Number 11. They didn't realize you were the exam until they flunked it. You weren't the accused, you were the assignment. And they failed in front of everyone. They thought they had the upper hand, thought they were watching you squirm, thought their lies, their setups, their public shaming meant they were in control. But the entire time, they were the ones being watched. They were being measured, they were being tested, and they didn't even see it. See, they thought it was your character on trial. But what actually got exposed? Their pride, their envy, their inability to hide who they really are when faced with someone who didn't fight back the way they expected. Your silence didn't just make them uncomfortable, it unmasked them. Your patience, it was pressure. The more you refused to engage, the more their chaos leaked out for the world to see. They thought you were being weak. Nah, you were letting the truth do the heavy lifting. You were the mirror, the one that showed them their fakeness, their performative loyalty, their craving for control. And instead of looking in that mirror and evolving, they panicked. They lashed out. They flunked the moment they tried to frame you for being everything they were. Imagine thinking you're the teacher grading someone else, only to find out the whole classroom's been watching you cheat. That's what happened here. They exposed their own fraudulence trying to expose you. They failed every test of loyalty, every test of character, every chance they had to show grace. They chose gossip. Every opportunity to stand with you, they stood against you. And now the results are in, and they can't even look you in the eye. They thought you were just another lesson, but you were the exam, and worse, it was open book, and they still couldn't pass it. Let them live with it. Let them feel the weight of that reality. You were never the one on trial. You were the proof. The one sent to show exactly who was real and who was rotten. They didn't just fail you, they failed themselves. And the curve won't save them now. Number 12. The universe made sure no one could claim your crown. They all left thinking you'd fall. Now none of them can say they helped you rise. Every betrayal, every fake friend, every slammed door. It wasn't punishment, it was precision. You weren't being broken, you were being cleared. Cleared of leeches, cleared of opportunists, cleared of anyone who might try to stand next to your win later and say, I was part of that. The universe didn't isolate you to harm you. It isolated you to protect what was being built. When everything around you collapsed, you thought it was failure. You thought something had gone wrong. But really, it was the foundation being set with brutal honesty. Nothing fake, nothing performative. Just you and the fire that was about to shape you. You weren't abandoned. You were insulated. Imagine trying to rise while dragging dead weight. That's what was removed from you. The universe stripped the stage clean, because when the spotlight finally hit, it had to hit only you. No distractions, no parasites, no one standing behind you pretending they held you up. And that's exactly what happened. Now they're watching you glow. Same people who ghosted you now got front row seats and no access. They can't explain how you got here, can't figure out how you stayed sane. They remember the nights you should have folded, the silence after the betrayal, the days you walked around like a ghost. They remember because they were counting on you to lose. But now you're not just at peace, you're untouchable. And here's the best part. Not a single one of them can take credit. Not one of them can say they helped, because they weren't there. And that's the point. Your rise was designed to confuse the ones who tried to block it, to silence the ones who thought they built you, to humiliate the ones who needed your fall to feel taller. So don't look back. Don't explain. Don't give them even a footnote in your story. They left so your victory could speak louder than their fake loyalty ever did. And now, you're the one standing in the light, with no shadows behind you. Number 13. The same name they mocked now makes them flinch. Your name used to be a joke, now it's a warning shot. There was a time your name was passed around like cheap gossip, laughed at, twisted, dismissed. You were the target they used to bond over, the scapegoat they could all mock without consequence. In their minds, you were finished. You were the villain. You were nothing but an easy punchline in rooms full of cowards playing pretend. But now, your name hits different. It lands with weight, with silence, with tension. Now they say it carefully, like it's cursed, because it is, cursed with truth. Truth that exposed their lies, truth that survived their slander, truth that didn't just walk back in, it outshined everything they tried to replace you with. Imagine laughing at a storm, only to find yourself standing in it later. That's what your presence feels like now. A shift in pressure, a reminder. They mocked you like you were disposable, but now you're unforgettable. They don't laugh anymore. They watch. Some don't speak your name at all because it reminds them of what they did. Some try to rewrite the past as if they were neutral. And some, they whisper, hoping it doesn't echo. Because now your name comes with receipts, with silence that says everything, with power that needs no introduction. You became the one thing they swore you'd never be, undeniable. And the more they tried to erase you, the louder your success became. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to prove a single thing. Your existence is the proof. Your presence is the pressure. And your name. It's no longer up for debate, so let them feel it. Let them sit in the rooms they once mocked you in, choking on their own regret. Because now the joke's dead. And you're the reminder that they couldn't bury you. They only planted your legend. And now that the dust has settled and the masks have cracked, one truth stands tall. You weren't destroyed. You were revealed. Their failure became your fuel. Their lies built your legend. You were the test they failed, the storm they couldn't stop, and the proof that silence hits harder than noise ever could. If this message cut deep, it was meant to. Like, subscribe, and drop 777 in the comments if you know you were the one they tried to break and failed. Share this with another chosen one. Let them know the storm didn't end them, it introduced them.